Good morning. How are we doing?
Hi, we're awake. We're awake. We're awake. This is a good thing. This is a good
Good,
thing. Yeah.
good stuff. So listen, so Sarah, so thank you for joining me. Um,
My
as
pleasure.
I as I previously mentioned to you, this year, obviously because of the old COVID, the Grenada Chocolate Festival, which happens every year, hasn't happened actually this year. So the team behind it have come up with the idea of us doing a virtual version. And
It's good.
obviously, as you know, many times I tried to get you to come to Grenada, but as we both know,
Timing has been a mess.
exactly, due to the fact that cocoa pods are coming into harvest at exactly the
Yes,
same time,
we're all busy. Yeah.
festival, I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
get you
yeah.
to ever come to Grenada. So I know that. It's not
Not
the
yet,
timing.
but it's gonna happen. It's
I
gonna
know,
happen. Believe me,
I
it's gonna
know,
happen.
I know it will. So this is kind of a blessing in disguise in a way, because you're still involved, but you're not
Yeah.
physically here to be
Yeah.
involved. So when everyone was saying it was going to be virtual, one of the things that I wanted to do was reach out to people who I connected with on my journey with Trial and Chocolate, or that I'd always been aware of, or connected with, or admired in some way, and just
Right.
wanted to kind of chat to them and get them involved in everything, because a lot of people, I guess on the more international scale, don't always highlight Caribbean chocolate makers or
Mm,
Caribbean cocoa that much.
yeah, that's for
So
sure.
to me, it was kind of a good excuse and an interesting and innovative way to kind of weave some people that I know into this story of the Caribbean chocolate, basically,
Yeah, I
and the
think it's
cold
great.
cocoa industry. So just so people understand who we are and so forth, I
Mhm.
obviously founder of Trial and Chocolate. I'm in my factory, which unfortunately is closed right now. So there's no lovely people coming in to buy chocolate and experience chocolate and make their own chocolate here in Grenada, in
Uh-huh.
St. George's, where we are based. Um, and just before we go over to you, I guess on my journey of learning about how to make chocolate before I kind of officially founded the company, I was in Trinidad connecting with different chocolate makers, learning about the
Hmm.
industry. I went to UE and learned about the whole sensory analysis around chocolate and the flavors, and
Hmm.
connected with Dr. Suka. And then I was trying to think exactly how you and I connected, because I know I reached out to multiple people at that time, because I
Yeah.
was only in Trinidad for like 5 days. So I was like
Mm.
just connecting. But I'm trying to remember how we connected.
You know, it I'm drawing a blank as well. Now that you mention it, I mean, I remember meeting you at the chocolate festival that CRC held
Yeah,
a
maybe
few
Matthew,
years
maybe
back.
Matthew.
But somebody had introduced you to me and vice versa, I think virtually. So maybe it might have been on the phone or something. And then
Yeah,
we agreed, okay, we tried to link up at the festival because
that was
I
it.
don't recall having spoken to you at any length before that, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. No,
But
no,
yeah,
you're right.
wow, yeah, serious blank. What's up with
I'm
that?
thinking it might have been Matthew. Because he was
Maybe.
one of the guys I was obviously learning with at UE,
Right.
and obviously you guys have a connection through business and
Yeah.
so forth. So maybe it was that. And then I just kind of pestered you and said, look, I'm here for like 4 more days or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I
just
want
let's
to
do
meet as
this.
many cocoa farmers as possible,
Yeah.
and learn as much as I can. And then you took me on
Hmm.
a wonderful tour of Trinidad through cocoa, basically. Is pretty
Albeit,
much,
quite short because there's so
yeah,
much, as you would recognize. But yeah,
yeah,
it definitely was a good introduction, and I'm glad you had that opportunity, to see both the academic as well as the field side and how they met in the middle and what's happening, with respect to the commodity chain here.
yeah.
The things that we're really trying to do to change change a few paradigms,
Gotcha.
put it that
Cool.
way. Yeah.
So just remind me exactly of the long list of stuff that you cover, because I know you cover a lot.
Yeah, but we'll spare you the long list.
Okay, okay. Edited version.
The edited version is I'm a plant scientist by training.
Yep.
Okay. And my foray into the cacao world, this was well before chocolate. It really started with the cocoa research unit at the time, which then became a center I think shortly after I left. But I was based at the cocoa research unit for 12 years. Yeah, right
Okay.
out of my undergrad degree in plant sciences, I needed a job. I wasn't drawn to cacao because I had this passionate love affair for chocolate.
Gotcha.
Like most,
Gotcha.
most of my colleagues in the industry, I don't have any, fancy romantic story about childhood longings for, chocolate
Gotcha.
behind me. I really needed a job, and yeah, they said yes, and I
Okay.
started in plant diseases of cacao, actually,
Okay.
working primarily on black pod. And then I got a chance over a few years to work with witch's broom disease under a few scientists there. And I started to get a little bit irritable because I wanted to know more. I wanted to explore more instead of just being in this one section for I don't know how long. Because initially when I started, the plan was to work for a year and then go back to do my master's.
Okay.
12 years later, we realize, we've been drawn in, cacao, it takes you in. It takes you in,
Yeah.
and it doesn't let you go. You don't let it go. Yeah, it's quite a journey. And so I moved from the strict study of diseases in cacao and management of diseases to actual post-harvest processing and flavor and quality evaluations under Dr. Darren Suka. Okay. So I really got the chance to cut my teeth with respect to the crop production. I got into the genetics behind it, the diversity, because Trinidad has the one of the, if not the largest and most diverse collection of cacao in the world. We're the guardians of that collection for the rest of the cocoa producing world. And I mean, it really, in hindsight, it turned out to be an epic gift, long days, long nights, long years. But I really got a chance to put my hands literally in the soil of everything that concerns cacao, from seed to finished product, and I didn't think that when I left CRC that I would come back to cacao. I really just wanted to walk away from science altogether. I didn't know what I was going to do, didn't really have a plan, but I said, you know what? We're going to just put one foot in front of the other and figure it out as we go along,
Gotcha.
And barely, I think maybe maximum 3-4 years later, I came full circle back into cacao in a way I had never expected. I really wanted to do a lot more work with the Ministry of Agriculture, a young field officer, and work my way up the ranks, build a network with the farmers, etc. But that wasn't to be, because we had a bit of an economic crunch here in Trinidad, and they had frozen all the hiring. So I recognized that, okay, I can't go the route of, being gainfully employed in the public service, right?
Yeah.
But I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to give back to the farmers. I knew what I'd been trained to do. And because I'd spent so much time in academia, I got the chance to see firsthand how much the academic and research side of it is hugely beneficial, right? But we have a massive gap with respect to knowledge, not just transfer, but knowledge exchange. And I think when we get into talking about what I do with and for Meridian and with the farmers here, you will understand why I make that distinction between knowledge transfer versus knowledge exchange, right?
Gotcha.
But suffice it to say, I pretty much started volunteering my time with farmers. I mean, the classic line that I have is, and it's true, any farmer who was willing to lend me on his or her land, I showed up, right? Because I was tired of seeing that there was so much information available in the academic space, tons of publications and all of these, fancy handouts and manuals and guides left, right, and center. And you get out into the field and you realize the farmers still don't really fully understand a lot of the evolution that has taken place with the science of post-harvest processing, understanding the crop husbandry, understanding the importance of soil stewardship, right? Pretty much everybody was just following whatever spiel had been given to them for seemingly decades, right?
Yeah, and that's very much the same here in Grenada too.
Yeah, it's not confined to Trinidad, that's for sure. There's very much a global component to it, and slowly but surely that has been changing over the years, but not without a fight. But everything worthy, it requires concerted effort, right? So anyway, my volunteer work with the farmers went on for about 6-7 years. And then in 2016, I'd already met Meridian, and this is the owner of Meridian, Gino Dalla Gasparina, I'd met him in 2012 when he and Charlie Wheelock of Woodblock Chocolate in Portland, Oregon, they came to Trinidad basically on a scouting mission. They wanted to learn a lot more about flavor and profiling and the impact of fermentation, et cetera, and begin to understand what was happening at origin that was affecting, you know, what they would get as chocolate makers, chocolate bean buyers and chocolate makers, right? Charlie had the expertise, the growing expertise with chocolate making, and Gino basically was on the business end of it. He had done an internship here in Trinidad for a year with the American Chamber of Commerce. So he really began to understand the trade situation, right? And how to get certain things moving. And Charlie just wanted to find a way to get beans from Trinidad to Portland. Okay. So Meridian started buying container-sized shipments from Trinidad, but primarily from the large-scale, consistent quality producers like the San Juan Estate, the Montserrat Farmers Cooperative, right? Because when you're dealing with such large tonnages, you need to know what you're dealing with, okay? You don't need surprises in bag number 125, okay? Or any other bag for that matter. So I was, having met them when they came to do the few days of training with CRC, they reached out to me to help begin some quality evaluations of these bulk batches that they were purchasing, right? So I was the person on the ground doing the sampling of the entire container, basically doing your standard cut test evaluations and running some basic quality evaluation procedures to give them a bit of baseline information, right? But that eventually, I did not expect that to really morph into what it has become now. I just know that with the 1 or 2 assignments that I had with Meridian in that capacity, it really whet my appetite for understanding more than just the production end, because I had, coming from an academic space, I had no concept outside of what I read in textbooks, heard from other people in the industry, what it was like to manage cocoa in storage, what it was like to manage the paperwork and the administrative nightmare that it is to ship cocoa beans, okay? The absolute loss of sleep experiences when you put those babies into a container and you realize you've relinquished bake on the port. You're lucky if the container doesn't fall off the crane, you know, and crash into something else, or if the boat, something happens on the ocean and your container ends up at the bottom of the sea. These are all real examples, okay? So this ain't imaginary, all right? But that said, I really started to question a lot of the things that I had read, because there's nothing like actual practical experience to begin to understand the nitty-gritty, the actual details, getting down into the weeds with respect to this crop, its management, its purchasing, its protection, its sale at the other end of the of the spectrum when it gets to where it needs to go. You know, the accountability that you have as intermediate buyer, the accountability that the farmer has to have with respect to how things were treated, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, fast forward from 2012, 2013, in 2016, I mean, I had the idea that I really wanted to start doing more one-on-one or small farmer group interventions to really now bring more of the current science to the processing space, the primary processing space, right? I knew I had all of this information, and I'd kept up over the years with my own experimentations. I'm always running a ferment at home as long as cacao is in season, because I'm always tweaking different parameters just to see how things behave, you know. So it gave me a chance to do a lot of self-learning, marrying it with the science that was evolving. I'm constantly going through journal papers, you know, talking to colleagues in the space who are willing to share their experiences and, you know, what's been happening on their research end. So it really gave me a chance to do what I wanted with a level of freedom I would not have had if I were attached to an entity, you know? So the very thing that I was afraid of, you know, just being this free floating, like almost directionless little field scientist.
Nomad, yeah.
Yeah, with like, oh, you don't belong to anybody. You don't belong. Who do you work for? Nobody. There's no big name I can attach to.
Yeah.
Oh, I work for this person, and like get a door open or have people think, wow, this is really interesting what you're doing. No, 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 no. It was literally in the trenches. You're doing this because you love doing this, and it really opened. Let me put it this way: the science really came alive for me then.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going through research projects and learning a lot, but I didn't have the level of control and influence then as I did, let's say, starting from 2016, come forward. Yeah.
Okay.
And that proved to be extremely, extremely invaluable, because it meant in getting to the farmers now and having to work with them one-on-one for a specific goal, i.e. of purchasing from them these very high quality beans, I was beginning to, one farm at a time, I was beginning to change the language and the style of interaction. It wasn't for me, I'd always seen extension workers come and they either dispense a list of things that need to be done, or they go through what the farmer needs to be looking at. And it's so much coming at the farmer in so little time. I mean, it's overwhelming for me as an academic. Can you imagine somebody who has to handle an entire farm operation being told, well, you have this list of like 50 things you need to look at with this fermentation to make sure we get what we want? I just pack up and leave.
And everything you have been doing, you have to change.
Yes, exactly. And you don't just drop a bomb like that on anybody. Okay, you don't do it to kids, you don't do it to adults. Okay, and you should not do it to a farmer, because there's so many other confounding factors. There's so many other things weighing in on the space of the farmer that you need to work with him or her or them at the pace that is specific to their situation, and their willingness to progress. So when Meridian said to, Gino called me up and he's like, so we've had this idea and this is what we want to do. We want to start looking at how else we can source from Trinidad. We don't want to have to deal with the middlemen. We want to deal directly with the farmers. We want to ramp up traceability. We want to take quality to a whole new level. We want to take buying transparency to a whole new level. And we want to pay the farmers well above market price. Okay. But to do this, that quality has got to be through the roof. Okay. And I was like, OMG, this is exactly what I've wanted forever, but I didn't have the financial backing. I didn't have the rest of the package to offer to the farmers, i.e. after we've done all of this hard work together, you are going to be fairly compensated for what you've put in. Of being somewhere else that you don't know anything about, The aim with the microlot project basically was to help fill a gap for both smallholder farmers and niche small chocolate producers. Okay, because as you would realize, as a small chocolate maker, as a small chocolatier, especially if you're doing your bean to bar operations, you don't work with very, very large quantities at a time. Okay, many of the chocolate makers who now form the network, the clientele base for Meridian Cacao, some of them can only manage, let's say, like a 50 kg bag for an entire line that they would put out over X number of months, and then then they work to make some money back, and the cycle starts again. They're not into buying tons, you see, and then you have the craft hobbyist chocolate makers or folks who just want to mess around with cocoa beans, just see what it's like. But they don't want to work with the standard stuff that, okay, well, it came from X continent or X island. And we don't know anything about it. We don't know who the farmers are. We don't know we've gained nothing except a handful of beans. This is not Jack and Beanstalk here. Okay. We need to know more. And it's very important that we need to know more, because you're talking about not just livelihoods and community impact. You're talking about really taking responsibility for what you're buying, what you're eating, and why. Okay. So when Meridian proposed the Trinidad Microlot project, I mean, to be quite honest, I think in hindsight now, we didn't realize how powerful this project would have become, not only for us, not only for the chocolate makers, not only for the producers, but everybody who's remotely had contact with what we do. Okay. This is, as far as we know, this is the first time this has been done in Trinidad and likely in the region. I can't speak to the rest of the, the cocoa growing planet. But in terms of working directly with producers in a way that isn't just, well, okay, the producer has beans, we're ready to buy. And then it's this, purchasing relationship that really isn't based on buying with an understanding of mutual needs and mutual respect.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we launched when we launched, all three of us decided that, okay, Meridian, Gino, and the logistics and salesperson Win, they came to Trinidad so that we could formalize a few things with respect to how certain things needed to be executed. Yeah. And they brought some small scale equipment, and we basically set up in a small room and started to test a few things out. Okay. They basically obviously had to rely on my outreach with the farmers, the interactions I already had with them, the network that I'd already built, that people at least would give us a listening ear as to, this is what we're proposing to do. Are you interested? Sure. We're starting small, where we were looking for a minimum of, let's say, maybe 1 to 2 bags, the gunny bags, okay, the jute bags. Yep. Let's say a minimum of 100 kgs, right? Okay. If you, as a smallholder farmer, you could work with us to help produce a fine batch of 100 kgs, and if that's all you can do, it meets our standards, we're gonna buy it, okay? And then the responsibility becomes mine, okay? Sure. Really mine, because as long as we've agreed to purchase and I verify the quality of the material, once those beans leave that estate, the farmer is paid within a couple of days maximum, okay? And those beans are now fully and wholly my responsibility, AKA my potential nightmare. Because if I'm babied to maintain of what I picked up on that. So learning the steps to handling the material, how much temporary as well as shorter to long-term storage becomes critical to ensuring that all the work that you put in at the start is not even remotely deducted, by a percentage point every given day or every week that passes until we can actually ship, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a financial venture, okay? And it needs to make sense. Granted, within our first year, I think we managed to ship roughly 6 tons of micro lots, okay, that we purchased from.
How many farmers would that have
been?
How
many different farms? That was roughly, I think if I remember correctly, because it's also fuzzy now. I think we must have had about 8 or 9 farms represented. Okay. Farms or regions represented in the space, right? But the aim with the microlot project is to have small lots coming from individual farms that are then sold in their entirety to small chocolate makers. So they get this unique batch that nobody else has, right? Yeah. So then for their marketing, for their ability to develop this like wow product, they're the only ones who have access to this, right? So in the early stages, I mean, we just didn't know how this was going to roll, but a lot of people expressed interest. Meridian had already built itself quite a reputation, both on the West Coast and growing across the US. And then, of course, because the business is online, you could be in Australia and ordering a 5 kilo batch of beans from, let's say, Vancouver, Trinidad. Okay? Yeah. I mean, that was not possible before. You would have to go through some large brokerage firm and hope to God what you got was what you desired. It was anybody's guess what you were getting. But with the microlot project and with Meridian's guarantee of quality, you basically got not just the story of the estate, because I work so closely with the farmers day in, day out over seasons, I document and I write the stories with them, things that they want, they would like to have said about what they do, how they do it. I take the photographs and that is shared in a private communique with the clientele that order from Meridian. Okay, so
Okay.
it's not something that generally makes it up onto the website. I think the first year we did it, and it probably still isn't on the Meridian page. We featured all the estates that we sourced from, and there was a bit of a write-up on each one. But I think in subsequent years, it was just kept as a private communique, because usually what would happen is the minute the buyers knew that material was coming in from Trinidad, it would sell out. Okay, the lots would already be pre-purchased, so that there would be no need to advertise on the internet. Any excess would then be sold on Meridian's online store. Okay. Which was super encouraging, because I mean, the last thing you want is that you bring beans in and then you're like twiddling your thumbs wondering who's going to buy. You know what I mean?
I think that's what I loved. I think that's what I loved so much about the website, because when I first came across it, obviously it was a lovely illustration of Trinidad, and it had all the different districts broken up, and then you'd had your individual farmers in each area. And for me, it was like, okay, that's interesting. But then it kind of, like you said, it had a little story about each farm, I think. Like I said, it was a couple of years ago, but that's what really I found it interesting, because then it was like, well, obviously I was still on this journey of learning about chocolate and cocoa, but that's when it made sense that different areas are going to have different flavors of beans. And why is that? In the climate and the soil and the rainfall and so many different elements. And then that map really kind of hammered it home to me a lot when I saw that, and got my interest really into the project.
Yeah, and I am that we can have some more updated stuff thrown up at some point in time. Let's see what the COVID-19 situation throws us all. But I think it would actually be good for us as a team to put out what has happened over the time, you know, so that people can see the progression. And because there are a lot of things that have happened that won't make the headlines, but that have been so crucial to the progress of that has been made with the actual farmers. Because one of the things for me that was a major mandate with the work that I did together with Meridian was that of bringing the science to the farmers in a fun way that did not seek to disregard indigenous practices, that did not seek to simply say, well, this is new and you need to forget everything that you've done. No, this is absolute teamwork. Listening to the farmers, paying attention to how they've been doing what they've been doing and why. And then within that, in an assessment of the quality of what they have at starting, you know, at the starting gate, okay, marrying with the science, what am I noticing? Where in the process are we getting these flaws? What can we do to tweak it so that it no longer becomes this attack on what the farmer was doing before that they need to, you know, toss in the trash, right? It's a case of, okay, I knew you've been doing this. This is what this tastes like. Now let's try something a little bit different based on what I've been noticing, you know, and I bring the science to them in a way that we just have fun with it. We really, really have fun with it. You know, we taste everything. We go from the fresh pod, we go from what they can observe on the tree, because of my training with the agronomy of the crop, dealing with the crop space, all of the companion plants, dealing with the fruit stages, you know, going through. I mean, it's a class in just sensory, you know, exploration, right? Every single time we engage. So by the time I spend, let's say, for example, a full 2 weeks or maybe 2 cycles of fermentation and drying with a farmer, there are certain things they will be able to say with confidence that most people, especially academics, I've recognized, would not expect them to know, and would not expect them to say with such confidence and such enthusiasm. Because when you see the light bulbs go on in the eyes, you know, and they start, you know, calling me and like, Sarah, we noticed this, and we're smelling this, and it tastes like this, and we think we need to, and they start experimenting with stuff without permission. It gets me excited, because I'm like, this is great. This is great. And they're owning it. That has always been a big thing with me and with the Microlot project. The aim is that the skills that are shared, because many of them have taught me little hacks in the cacao space that they picked up from, you know, people who taught them when they were children, right? They may not have understood the science behind it, but because now I'm coming with the eye of evaluation and analysis and measurement, and we need to look at what patterns are emerging. It's like, oh my goodness, this is why they did this for so long. This is the
Yeah.
science that explains this, you
Yeah.
know. But for the farmer, they don't need to get tied up in the actual
Of
scientific
course.
explanations. They just need to know that this works.
Yeah.
And that in this working, I can get a higher price if I make sure this happens all the time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a level of empowerment.
Yeah.
It's a word that's been so used and abused. I hesitate sometimes to use it,
Yeah.
but it's a level of empowerment that cannot be paid for. It certainly
Sure.
isn't captured in the higher market price because
Yeah.
it's something that the farmers can now take and apply to almost anything else on their land, any other project space that they wish
Got
to
you.
work in crop wise. You understand?
So in just because time's with us
Mm-hmm.
and against us slightly, but in terms of like what's the real kind of takeaways that you've really, I know you mentioned some just then, but in terms of what you've seen farmers have taken away from it, and then have any of them gone into their own direction and even started making chocolate off the back of the project? Because I do remember when we connected, there was a farmer, and I cannot remember his name. It was a husband and wife that were doing they were the cocoa side of it. I'm not sure if they were going into chocolate, and he had his own little
Right.
warehouse. What was his name of the farmer? Do you remember him?
This was this in Tabaquite? Was this Mr. Chattagoon?
Yes, yes, Chattagoon.
Yes.
That's it. That's
Right.
it. Him.
Right.
So is he still involved? Is it because he was quite passionate?
He was, and I think he still is. But with the current purchasing climate, I mean, since last
Yeah.
year, the economically, the climate for cocoa buying, especially with the price of Trinidad's material, it's been extremely challenging,
Sure.
extremely challenging. So I'm not sure what position he's in right now, but it's a tough call for everybody. It's a
Yeah.
really, really tough call for everybody, you know. But with
But
respect to
in
the
terms of farmers in general, like how have they embraced
Well,
everything, I guess?
for right. Well, okay. So let's make the reference up to pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
For many of them, it was the momentum was really growing. A number of these farmers went on to win local awards for their beans.
Yeah.
A select few of them actually made it to the top 20, the top 50 in the world at the Cocoa of Excellence in
Oh,
Paris.
nice.
And
Wonderful.
then two of them made it into the top 20 with awards. Okay, they were two out of the top 5 in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Okay.
So it was a real testament to the work that had gone in, the learning and the improvement in quality that had happened. And of course, with the fame that they've gotten, all of the attention that they've gotten off of this, they've told
Yeah.
me, Sarah, you know, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because so many people from, you know, all around the world and
Gotcha.
locally have been flooding them with requests for, you know, we
Sure.
want beans. And then they realize that they're these really tiny producers, right?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
don't have the labor to expand or don't have the desire to go into any massive scale of production. You
Gotcha.
know, so you will always have the small scale, and there needs to be room for that, because there's a
Yeah.
level of uniqueness that can be brought to the space. And I want through the Meridian. I mean, with the work that I've been doing, thanks to Meridian, our dream has always been ultimately to spread this through the region, the island, do some work with chocolate. First, I think my first shameless sales pitch is that, guys, I'm doing this, but I'm doing this because at some point I want to buy your beans as a micro lot, okay? And this is what we're going to be able to do for you, you know. But
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, and we've been very proud to work with all of the chocolatiers who've been willing to buy repeatedly, the new ones coming on board, the number of people who've won awards because of the beans that they have made into chocolate across the
Sure.
globe, you know. And I mean, for me, it's been really heartwarming to have them send the chocolate bars back for the farmers,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. I'm sure.
So I can show you. So like there's one here. Let me see.
Oh, there we go. Ah,
So
yes. 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 Yes.
this was
Literally.
an exclusive, you know, limited edition. This was
Okay.
from Maruga. There's one from Tableland.
Okay.
We have Palette de Bean from
Okay.
Montreal, Canada. She worked on 3 different origins from Trinidad. She sent
Ah,
that back for the cocoa farmers to
yeah.
taste. Monsoon Chocolate did a Tabaquite bar. Enna Chocolate did some stuff from the eastern part of Trinidad, from one of my the microlot farms there. Yeah, so the list is just growing. We've been really excited to see them actually turn them into limited edition bars. They get their sales, they get their, you know, their hype, but the farmers ultimately get to see their names on a bar. They get to see their estates on a bar. They get their story told to the globe. You know, it's marketing that they couldn't possibly have paid for, and then they literally get to taste the converted product. You know? Totally. So it's been super encouraging, and I think because the craft chocolate market is so fickle, and it's always about the new flavor of the month, you know, and what new, you know, like unique or, you know, amazing story you can tell. It's a tough call because it means you have to really be constantly on the ball with respect to how else can we present something, you know, that is very reflective of what is happening on with the farmers, but get that message out as to how important the producers are for that end of the production chain, you know. So it's been one heck of a journey. A lot of work, a lot of work, but looking forward, hopefully, you know, depending on how this you know, the current pandemic and, you know, everyone's adaptation rolls out, I'm really looking forward to taking this to the islands. So good. I'm coming for Tri-Island beans, all right?
Watch this space.
Number one.
Definitely.
I want an exclusive lot.
It's coming. We'll work on it. No, I love that because, like I said, like, you know, the journey that I've been on since 2016 with chocolate, and I kind of dipped my toe into learning along the way from Trinidad, you know, in terms of CRC and so forth. And just to see this little project, and I say little, but to see the project, obviously it's definitely big, but to see it kind of just grow and never really having a full understanding of the ins and outs of it, because I'm only going off a website, really and truly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was just taking information from every source and just watching and coming across different companies and so forth, and different chocolate makers and cocoa farmers and stuff. And that's as little as I knew, but I knew you were involved in some capacity. So for me to really have a better understanding of how it all gelled together, especially about knowing how the farmers then, because sometimes you see these types of projects where company, North America, UK, Europe, wherever, flies into country, purchases beans, the lovely farmers on the bar, on the packaging, they mention his name or not. And then the beans end up somewhere else, and the chocolate gets made in Belgium or wherever it might be, and all happily ever after. And you know, and that seems to be the cliche that happens again and again and again. So for you guys to talk about it in such a way where even if that was to happen to the farmer, just to say it did, the one thing from that project that warms me is knowing that the farmer now has far more insight and understanding and ability now that he can go off and hopefully start making chocolate. Like, he might not want to, his kids might want to, but at least he now has the skills, or he's got the knowledge that he can then pass on, as well as knowing how to prune a cocoa tree and how to look after his land.
Everything.
He now literally knows the full gambit of it. He might not have all the machinery, but he has the skills and the know-how. And like you said, when the extension officers were to connect with him, I'm sure pretty much it'll be him teaching them and not them trying to teach him, right? Or her. So that for me is definitely...
And that is huge. That is huge because it has such a massive ripple effect with everything in their own lives. Because turning that light on about, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. I can actually learn this. It influences everything else that they're going to do, whether I'm around to see it or not, you know. And my aim is to not be around to see it, because as I tell them, when I work with you, when I train you in everything that I know, I need to be able to disappear. I need to be in a hammock somewhere under my banana tree, you know, and you carry on.
No, definitely.
You know, so definitely.
Well, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before, like, the kids of the parents would eventually be curious enough to say, look, if these guys in North America, Canada, wherever, are buying our beans, let's keep a bag together and just play and make some chocolate and see what it tastes like. And then, you know, at least we could eventually maybe move into it ourselves, as well as produce the beans and maybe buy the farmer's land next door to us and have more beans. And now we can start making chocolate and sell beans, and you never know where this could go.
You never
But it's
know.
definitely exciting.
It's actually, it blows it wide open, wide open. You know, kids can bring so many different skill sets to it. So that's why when I usually work with the farmers, as long as the kids are around, everybody gets involved, you know. And brilliant. If anybody effectively teach, you know, I would have been like, no, I don't think so. But it has become the most powerful tool for me, because I can bring in the biology, the science, you know, the physics, the chemistry, everything rolled into one without having them feel like they're at school, you know. And it's just a whole living laboratory type situation, which is what gets me excited, you know. And it makes the chocolatiers on the other end happy, because then the beans have been treated with respect. I've had some chocolate makers tell me they can always tell when, you know, beans have been well treated, not just because of quality parameters, but when there's actual love that goes into the handling of the beans. You know, I mean, a lot of these chocolate makers take it to a whole new level, you know, and some may write it off as, oh, well, you know, that's a little bit of new age stuff. But when you begin to understand energy exchange, and you begin to work with different kinds of beans, and you understand when love is part of the picture, love for what you love of the land, love of dynamic completely. And I dare a lot of people in the region to begin to pay attention to things like that, because it's huge, because it affects more than just the bean. It affects more than just the individual farmer doing the processing. It starts an entire whirlwind of awesome stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I've lived it. I live it. So I get super excited whenever I talk about it, whenever I think about how far we've come in such a short space of time with such a small project. But yeah, you do what you can, and you know, it'll make its impact.
Yeah. Nah, well, I think that's a perfect place to end our chat, to be honest. And I hope, you know, for me, it was definitely enlightening to know a lot more of the inner workings behind it, because, you know, people just see the website and then the buyer sees the beans, but the bits in between, you don't always get to kind of connect those dots. And obviously, like you said, putting those beans to bed every night, many sleepless nights, more than 9 months. I'm sure.
Oh, one night can feel like 9 months, let me tell you.
I'll be sure. Super.
Indeed. But thanks so much. Right. Thanks so much for opening it up to the you know, to the rest of the cacao interested folks in the region. I think this is actually huge. I think it's actually a very pivotal start to a wave that is building in the region. You know, we have a lot to offer. There's, as I keep saying to all of my farmers and all of the processors, there's room for everybody, because everybody has a story that is worth hearing, that is worth telling, that adds a little more to a very complex puzzle in the region. You know, and it's one that we need to build, and we need to build it together, and we need to look at it together. So super excited. Mind those beans. I'm coming for them.
All right. All right then. Thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure.
All right, love. Take care.
Alrighty.